Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mrs. Smith here, and we are on to bigger and better things. We're into one of the biggest chapters that we will do in pre-algebra. And this chapter is Unit 3, and it is on equations. So this is kind of the basis of algebra and pre-algebra, and you will use this for the rest of your math career. So here we go. We're starting with lesson 3.1, solving two-step equations. I can write and solve a linear equation, 2 steps with rational number coefficients. So here are some of the steps. You can see they are listed right here. So 1, isolate the variable by getting rid of any number that's being added or subtracted by moving it to the other side and using inverse operations. 2, get rid of the number with the variable by doing the inverse operation. 3, what you do to one side, you must do to the other. And 4, solve for the variable. Now, if that doesn't make sense, it will in a minute. I want to talk about, before we get started on some problems, everything about equations. And equations are built on being balanced, being equal. Do you guys know from science, and okay, I'm going to try my best to be a artist here, and I'm not very artistic, but do you know this thing in science that you've maybe used before that's a pan balance? I know that's not a very good representation, but you would put something on the side, like some coins or some teddy bears or something like this, and you would put the same thing on the other side to keep these two in balance. Once you put, something on one side, it goes down, and then this one goes up, and then you put the same thing on the side, and then it gets balanced back out. Well, equations are built on the exact same principle as a pan balance. So you always have to keep in mind that you are working to keep these exactly the same, keeping balanced at all times. And that's what some of these steps are helping us do, is keep our equation balanced. So, and that's this whole number 3, what you do to one side, you must do to the other. That's keeping everything balanced. So just like this pan balance. So here we go. Number 1, it says 2x plus 1 equals -7. Now, I like to draw a line down the center because that's this line right here on my pan balance, keeping everything in the center and keeping everything, you've got one side and you've got the other. Now, I also like to, tell stories, you know me. So I kind of consider yourself the story of X. You are X. Okay, so that's you. And you have 2 buddies hanging with you. You've got a 2 and you've got a 1. And mom calls out to the outside. You guys are outside playing, and mom calls out and says, "It's dinner time." And so you know your mom very well, and she wants just you for dinner. She doesn't want your 2 buddies, your 2 and your 1. So they have to be, kicked to the curb. Not literally, but you got to get rid of them before you can go into dinner. So in order to do that, you have to isolate the variable, or isolate your X. So you've got to get you by yourself and get rid of your 2 buddies. In order to do that, you have to get rid of any number that's being added or subtracted by moving it to the other side. And I kind of always refer to this as, you've got 2 friends. You've got your best buddy 2 because he's right by your side. And then you have your other friend. He's a good friend, but not as close as your 2 friend. And that one's the plus 1. So you get rid of him first because he's not your closest friend. So what you do to get rid of it is you do the opposite, the inverse operation. So this is an add 1. So the inverse would be to subtract 1. And then keeping in distance, so over here, if I put on my pan balance, I subtracted 1 on this side, I would have to subtract 1 on the other side to keep it balanced. And that's what I did in my equation. Subtract 1 and subtract 1. Now I'm very careful to line things up because that helps us with our math, especially when we get into more complicated things. So right under plus 1, I put -1. Right under -7, I put -1. So these cancel. You've got a plus 1 and a -1, and all that leaves you with is 2x on this side. So I bring that down, and now I have -7 minus 1. Now be careful. That's why we just did all that integer fluency. It's -7 minus 1. So of course you can do the KFC, the keep, flip, change. So keep it, flip it, change it. So it's really -7 plus a -1, which would be -8. Now, you're still not by yourself. You've still got your closest friend here, and you have to get rid of him before you can go in for dinner. And you have to do the inverse. When they're smushed together, they mean multiply. So the opposite, or the inverse, that's what opposite is another word for inverse is opposite, you would divide by 2. And of course, what you do to one side, you have to do the other to get it balanced. So over here, I said divide by 2. And so over on the other side, I also have to divide by 2 on my panel balance. So when I put a fraction bar, that means divide. So I'm dividing by 2. Whoops, sorry. Those cancel because when you multiply and divide by the same number, you come up with 1. So that just leaves you x equals, and you have negative 8 divided by 2, which is negative 4. And dun da da da, ladies and gentlemen, that's your answer. Now, you could, of course, I love these because they have a built-in check system that you can check out your work to see if it works. So where x is, you're going to replace it with negative 4. So I have 2, and then instead of x, I'm going to put in negative 4. And then I'm going to say plus 1 equals negative 7. I'm going to do the math. So 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. Plus 1 equals negative 7. Negative 8 plus 1 is negative 7. And indeed, negative 7 does equal negative 7. So yes, it checks out. So that means x equals negative 4 is my answer. Okay, so here we go. Number 2. We have 4x plus 7 equals 3. So again, same thing. You're outside playing with your 2 buddies. 4 is your closest buddy. 7 is another buddy that you have there, not as close as your other 4 buddy. You're going to draw your line down the center to keep everything balanced. And so mom yells out, "It's supper time, it's dinner time." So you have to get rid of your buddies. So you get rid of the one that's not so close to you. It's an add 7. So the opposite would be to subtract 7. And I'm careful to line things up so I can see right underneath that you have an add and a subtract, so they eliminate. So you have 4x equals, and you have 3 minus 7. Now again, be careful, 3 minus 7, that of course is a keep, flip, change again. So keep it, flip it, change it, and that would be a negative 4. So now get rid of your other buddy by doing the inverse. They're being multiplied, so the opposite would be to divide. So I'm going to divide by 4, and x is equal to negative 4 divided by 4, which is negative 1. Now, you can certainly plug it in to check it out. I'm not going to take the time in this video to do that, but you could certainly stop the video and check out to see if it works. Here we go. Number 3. 19 equals 2n minus 5. Now, same thing. All I did is change the variable, so now you're n instead of x, and I flipped sides. I put the variable on the right side of the equal sign instead of the left. Does that change anything? Absolutely not. If it bugs you, then of course you could change and just say 2n minus 5 equals 19 and flip it around if that makes it easier for you. So again, it's supper time, and you got to get rid of your buddy. You get rid of your buddy that's not so close to you first. That's always your first step, being careful to line things up. You have 19 plus 5, which is 24. 24 equals 2n, and then I need to do the opposite. They're being multiplied, so the inverse would be to divide. And then you have the 2 divided by 2, which is just 1, so that's n equals, and 24 divided by 2 is 12. Dun, da, da, da. All right, one, maybe 2 more. We might do 2 more because this next one is a little bit different. So it's x divided by 4 plus 7 equals 3. So again, I draw my line down the center. It is still a 2-step equation, but notice how I wrote this x and then divide by 4. It really doesn't change much, but boy, it does throw students for a loop sometimes. Again, line down the center, keeping things balanced. Mom says it's dinner time. You have 2 buddies. Notice this one is closest to you, 4, and then your other buddy, he's over 7. So we're going to get rid of him first. So I'm going to subtract 7 and subtract 7. When I do that, that cancels, leaving x divided by 4 on one side, and then 3 minus 7. Well, 3 minus 7 is negative 4. Now, how to do this one? It's already being divided. So the inverse, or the opposite of divide, is, hopefully you yelled at me and said, Mrs. Smith, it's multiply, because that's what I need. So multiply by 4, and then of course what I do to one side, I have to do the other to keep it balanced. So if I was up here on my balance here, I would multiply this side by 4, and of course I'd have to multiply this by 4 to keep it balanced. So when I have a multiply and a divide, that would be 1. So that just leaves me x on this side, and I have negative 4 times 4, which is negative 16. And again, you could check it out, see if it works out. All right, number 5. Let's do this one. C divided by negative 3 minus 1 equals 2. So once again, lying down the center as my balance. I have 2 buddies. Mom says it's dinner time, so I get rid of the guy that's not so close to me first, or the gal, I guess. I add 1. I do the inverse, the opposite, so those cancel. That leaves me C divided by negative 3 equals, and I have 2 plus 1, which is 3. Now they're being divided. The inverse would be to multiply, but be careful. Did you notice that this is a negative 3? So that means I'm going to multiply by a negative 3 on the other side. So once again, those cancel, leaving me C equals, and I have 3 times negative 3, and 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. These are all 2-step equations. All right.